Hey guys, I'm with Props, and today I'm going to show you how I made my 3D printed Dark Angels Chain Sword from Warhammer using my 3D printer, some resin, and Bondo. If you guys want the files for these, I'll have the Thingiverse link in the description if you guys want them. I did modify the ones that I used so that I didn't have any plugs or anything like the Thingiverse files have, but that just made my life a little bit easier when scaling it so that I could print it a little bit larger because my friend has pretty big hands, so I wanted this a little large for him. And I just super glued all of the pieces together. If you print it with the plug parts on it, then you're probably going to want to sand down the connection bits so that it fits together a little better, but since I didn't do that, I didn't have to worry about that. I did actually have some parts that broke when I ripped out the supports, like the cross guard, so be careful when you're doing that, otherwise you'll probably break like mine did, but I just was able to super glue it back together and it worked. Also, make sure to line up all your parts right. I didn't do that, and you guys obviously saw that I accidentally super glued two ends together, and then I had to sand down the super glue that had hardened, and yeah, it was just a little bit more work than I wanted to do, so make sure to line up all your parts right. And once you do that, you can just use some super glue and super glue accelerant to glue all of the parts together, making sure they're in the right order. In case you accidentally glue one offset, acetone helps to dissolve the super glue so that you can realign the parts, and since I printed in PLA, it doesn't damage the PLA like ABS would. Though one downside to PLA is that it warps in the sun, which this blade did do that when I first painted it, but I was able to get it evened out with a hairdryer. I bought some resin specifically for this build, and it's just normal casting resin. It's really fast drying stuff, so it cures in 7 minutes. So I mixed up some of that using 1/2 of part B and 1/2 of part A, and then I mixed that up using my stir stick, and then used an old brush of mine to go through and brush it on all the layer lines and everything. I did 2 layers of this just to fill in all of the layer lines and build up a little bit of a thickness over it, just to cover up all the lines and give it a nice smooth surface and to give it some density before I went through and sanded it. When mixing this, you want to make sure you mix up an equal amount of part A and part B. I did 2 batches where there was too much of one thing and it didn't end up curing right, so I had to wipe it away. And when brushing it on, you want to make sure to not brush it after it's starting to cure, otherwise it'll like bump up and get all rough and jaggedy. It's just a pain to sand after that, so make sure to watch out for that. I then used some 220 grit sandpaper and wet sanded down the whole surface. As you can see, I've been doing a lot of sanding on it and it's pretty smooth to this point, but you are probably gonna have to do a lot more sanding than what I'm doing right here. I had to do a lot more. I've been sanding this thing for like a week just to get it nice and smooth, and even now it's still not perfect, so I'm probably gonna do some selective sanding with some Bondo and stuff, but overall it's pretty good. You may not have to fill and sand at all if your print quality is amazing, but I wanted to get this done pretty fast, so I printed it at 0.375 layer height, which is seriously tall, and it got this done in like 2 days. So really fast print on this part, but that meant I had to do a lot more filling and sanding. I hit it with a thing of filler primer just to fill in all the lines, and then I painted it green, masked up some parts, and painted those with some gold coloring or gold metallic stripe paint. And then went through and masked off the chain teeth part and painted that a metallic silver, just using some Rust-Oleum silver paint. And then I went through and used a silver paint pen to give it some paint chipping effects on all the corners and edges and everything, just to give it a really nice worn look. I was thinking about doing a black wash on this, but I didn't end up doing that just because I wasn't sure how well that would affect this, and since it's not the sturdiest thing in the world, I didn't want to risk breaking it accidentally with wiping away all the paint and pressing pretty hard on it, so I didn't end up doing one of those. I used a strip of leather from an old costume. I'm thinking it was Thor's hammer is what I got this from, but I went through and glued that on using some hot glue just every few inches or so to hold it down. I'm not trying to get this perfectly fit on there because it's mainly going to be a display piece, but I do want the grip to be kind of comfortable rather than just the raw plastic on it. I also made a Dark Angels symbol template and dabbed on some white paint over that just to give it a nice kind of worn look. Overall, I'm super pleased with how this turned out. I really like the kind of worn look that it has, and I think it's pretty smooth. I think it's one of my better finished props, and I made this for a friend for graduation, and I gave it to him a couple days ago, and he really liked how it turned out, so I'm glad that's how that worked. If you guys don't mind checking out my Patreon and supporting me through there. This build was, well, not quite requested by Patreon, but he asked me to make some Warhammer stuff, so I made this. If you guys don't mind, like and subscribing, please do. Let me know what builds and stuff you guys want me to make, and I'll get making them. See you guys next vid, and bye.